Well, Chelsea fans were singing their manager's name, but it was their former manager, as Man City, for the second time this week, take care of business against the London club, 4-0 from Pep Guardiola's side. And Chelsea, Graham Potter, out of the FA Cup. Luis Miguel, Echegaray, LME here. Welcome to ESPN FC. Janusz, Michallik, and we're going to have a lot of other guests coming later. But Janusz, welcome to the show, my friend. Your initial reactions as Man City, once again, with that tremendous squad, take care of business against Chelsea and Graham Potter. What do you think?
Well, I mean, not surprising, I suppose. Humbling to Chelsea to some degree. I think, ahead of this game, everybody probably understood that Chelsea were going to lose this game. And who knows, maybe the players themselves, by the way, look. But you never really want to be on the end of a hammering here. And that's exactly what happened. And, Manchester City really probably in second, third gear with number of key players being rested as well. But given to Chelsea and their situation right now, I don't think anybody expected Chelsea Football Club to get anything out of this.
I don't think so either, Janusz. But there were other elements to this game, right? Chelsea didn't really do anything really in that first half. They didn't even maintain a shot on target. And, throughout the course of the game, it seemed very, very woeful. A little bit more of a fight later in the match. But do you think this is now exposing a lot more of what Chelsea are doing, or rather not doing, under Potter? Or do you think it's still, early days and Graham Potter should be given time?
He should be. I mean, what else should they be doing? With whom? I know you're asking me a question I don't want to throw back, but with whom? Even before the 10, remember the game 3 days ago, they had 11 injuries because then later we found out after the game, I think Mendy was gone as well. Mason Mount had a knock. Today he came back, not 100% for sure. But, with those type of players, all arguably starting players, or at least a good depth, and with so many young players on the bench, with whom? Even if they were available, Chelsea always had an issue scoring. If you name me one player that is a consistent goal scorer, even with the players that are missing, I'd sit here and listen. So I think this is, as we've said, this is a massive, massive change. I think you and I have talked about this a couple of days ago, and I've said this was a quiet, or maybe I've said this is a soft rebuild. This is a total rebuild, and that's what we got to get used to it. And again, I'm not trying to make any excuses, because you can always make a statement that, maybe the effort should be better, but I just don't see how it possibly can be, right? I just don't see it with that team. Forget for a second that the name of that team is Chelsea Football Club. Nobody, and I repeat, nobody would be able to withstand that with these sort of injuries, with the issues that they've had over last year. It's and I think we're seeing this right now being played out on the pitch.
No need to overreact, says Janusz Michallik. Let's bring in some other notable names from the ESPN FC crew of Steve McManaman, of course, and Jon Champion, who called the game. And I tell you something, I really want to hear these lovely gentlemen's thoughts regarding this match. John, let's begin with you. You called the game. You just saw what happened. Thomas Tuchel, his name was being called out throughout the stadium. What do you make of this performance under Chelsea? The injuries are clearly an issue, but Man City once again takes care of business. And when you look at the table, Chelsea's not doing well there as well. Where does Graham Potter go from here, and what did you see today?
Well, Graham Potter's had, 18 games at the helm now, 4 months in charge. And yes, there's a clamour for his head, but we live in this black and white world where you're either great or you're absolutely hopeless. There's no in between. There's no nuance. There's no taking into account the circumstances. So I feel for him. He's caught in the midst of this storm, this clamour for change at the moment. And yet he's only got half a squad. There were 10 players that would otherwise have been up for selection unavailable to him. And of course, the club is still in a state of flux because you've got Todd Boehly come in, American ownership. I'm not totally sure that he's absolutely across what he's taken on. And I'm also not sure, Steve, that the level of expertise maybe above Graham Potter is there to provide the advice in terms of reshaping the squad.
Yeah, I agree. They're a bit of a mess, aren't they, at the moment? They've bought another 4 players this last week or so, haven't we? And Nkunku's coming in, or supposedly coming in at the end of the season. So there's more to add to the roster of players they have, and they have too many players at this moment in time. Yes, they're decimated by injuries, and the injuries that you have to mention are really good players who will influence the team, therefore influence the results. But I agree, the ownership structure seems to be so haphazard at this moment in time that I'm the same as you. I feel sorry for Graham Potter. He can't pick his best team. He can't pick the players he wants because they're not available. He's been given more players that he probably doesn't need. So you just have to be patient. But Chelsea, this ownership, the ownership beforehand, I remember Frank Lampard getting 5 months before he was thrown out of the job because, of course, with COVID, that season started in the September. He was out by January. Thomas Tuchel, who got to 2 finals last year and kept a clean sheet against Liverpool until penalties, he's out of a job straight away, which is baffling beyond belief. So you don't know what's happening for Graham Potter. I hope they stick with him. I hope they have patience. But it's a very strange scenario at this moment in time for Chelsea.
So let me just jump at this then, Janusz. So let me bring it right back to you here, because obviously, we began this conversation by not needing to create this mayhem of overreacting. Steve brings a very good point about the fact that Todd Boehly, let's remember, he comes from the world of the Dodgers and US sports. He's just entering this thing. But the facts are here. It's January and Chelsea are already out of the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup, are 10th in the Premier League. I believe Rob Dawson said it earlier this week. Fans want to see results. Is Graham Potter the right man for the job, or is the criticism too soon? Janusz, I know where you're going, but please indulge me for a minute. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I agree with the boys, but there lies a problem in when we were talking about Lampard and everybody else before. First and foremost, we have to forget, and we have to remember that this is no longer Roman Abramovich era. Right? There's no quick fix in terms of buying a player for 60, 80, 90 million players just because he can, and he loses money and it's his and nobody cares, right? There's no quick fix in terms of getting rid of managers, although that may happen. Who knows? I'm not sure how long Potter's going to stay. And this is a different era. And actually, I think there's a very clear direction in what they do. I'm not saying it's great and it's looking good and Chelsea fans are happy, but the clear direction is exactly this. I have to look down because, injuries are one thing, but today, Lewis Hall, 18 years old, Humphreys, 19 years old, Benoit Badiashile, 21, Datro Fofana, 20, Chukwuemeka, 19, and Hutchinson, 19 years old. That tells you everything. The 3 players. Oh, by the way, Andre Santos, who just got back from Vasco da Gama, that was yesterday, so they probably couldn't get him to the stadium quickly enough, because if they could, they probably would. So that direction it's pretty simple to me. And I think we were all surprised maybe with Graham Potter, but maybe we shouldn't be, because they just said, look, this is what we're going to do. And we don't need a super big name for that. Now, we can have an argument if Graham Potter is going to be that man. Should he have, if he's going to be able to deal through this incredible time, as John mentioned, because you couldn't think of a possibility that there's going to be a war in Ukraine and Abramovich is going to be out, right? What are the chances of that happening? So we can talk about Graham Potter, but I think John said it, or Maka maybe, 4 months. I think Graham Potter said it best. He said, what did he talk about? Jurgen Klopp, nothing in the first year, right? Pep Guardiola, no trophy in the first year. Mikel Arteta, I'm pretty sure when they finished 8th in 2-3 years ago, 2 seasons, I think we had them all fired. Even maybe last season we did as well. So I think when I look at that, I see a clear direction of what they want to do. This is going to be a totally different Chelsea Football Club. And we'll see if Graham Potter is the man to do it.
Jon Champion, I can't help but think, I tweeted it a few days ago. Chelsea fans were just coming at me, but I didn't care because I loved the euphemism. But Graham Potter, to me, had a beautiful thing at Brighton. And I feel that, unlike Dorothy, who indeed did go back to Kansas, I feel that Potter does, want to go back and leave us, in this case, Chelsea. But to Janusz's point, he needs time. But Chelsea have won only once in the last 7 matches. How do they turn this around? And of course, I want to hear from Mac as well, because having played against Chelsea, I really want to see that. But John, how do they turn this around under Graham Potter?
Well, by getting some players back, for a start, so that we're not seeing 19-year-old fullbacks. We're not seeing players making their debuts, because it's not the time or the place for that, but it's needs must. So I think the treatment room needs to clear. Some of those 10 players need to come back. They're all good enough to make an impact. So Potter needs to take a deep breath, hope that he's given the time. I think the best parallel that you came up with, Janusz, when you were talking just then was Mikel Arteta. Because look where Arsenal are now, flying at the top of the league, playing some lovely football. And you're quite right, 2.5 years ago, his situation with Arsenal was not dissimilar to what Potter's is now. This season is basically, Champions League apart, a write-off, I think.
I think so. And I've got no problem with that, John. I detest this bring in managers and get rid of them really quick. I think managers need time. I think they need patience. You know, these are clearly not Graham Potter's signings. There's somebody above him, above his pay grade, and he's just been given these players. We understand that they're buying a lot of young players and it's for the future. But we also know that that once the fans start calling for people's heads, that, you know, the owners normally panic. I hope they don't. I want Graham Potter to be given the time that he deserves. You know, I'm glad Arsenal have stuck with Arteta, but you'd go back before him. They give Unai Emery 18 months and he got to the Europa League final. So this happens a lot of the time. So I hope they're patient. I hope they give him lots of times. I hope they're allowed to let him bring all of his injured players back and let them have an impact on the pitch, because they're missing some serious players in some very important positions. So I'm all for patience. I really am. It's just that in this world where we live, and we live in England, well, I certainly live in England, and I'm used to watching the Premier League on a daily basis. The fans and social media have a lot of power, more power than I've ever seen in my 30 years of football. And normally people in control are starting to panic, you know, more quickly than they've ever done. So I hope that, even though there were shouts of Thomas Tuchel tonight, I hope they give Graham Potter the patience and the time that he truly deserves.
And of course, on that point, I mean, it would be a big call for Todd Bowley, not least because he would be admitting that his first big call was a mistake.
Yes, absolutely. And it was a mistake. It was, regardless of how Graham Potter does, I think it was a mistake anyway. I don't know the in and outs of the relationship between Todd Bowley and of course, Thomas Tuchel. I don't. But judging on what they did last year, judging on what they did a couple of years ago when they won the Champions League, seeing Chelsea and how difficult they were to beat last year, this is a completely different scenario this year. This is completely different. So, you know, I think the decision to get rid of Thomas Tuchel was wrong anyway. But again, I don't know their relationship and what went wrong between them. And but I just hope Graham Potter's given the time that he deserves as a manager and as a really nice person.
One thing is for sure, this is a very big test, the biggest since Todd Bowley joined Chelsea, to see what can happen and how he can help steady the ship. I tell you what, after hearing all the boys here, everybody, it's good to see that we are, I guess, judging from the production standpoint, we're the calmer side, Janusz, Michallik, because when we're going over to what Craig Burley and Frank Leboeuf, a former Chelsea legend and World Cup champion, saying, Janusz, they were ripping into Chelsea, saying they're shameful, they do nothing. Criticism, Janusz, too harsh?
Well, I suppose, I mean, they're associated with that club, so maybe it's a little bit different for them. So I felt for them just a little bit. But yes, I mean, given what we just said, they were asking for veterans, but just which veterans? I mean, I suppose the spine of the team could have been different or better, but Koulibaly, fair play. I mean, I'm very disappointed with the way he's played. I've loved him at Napoli. I'm sure many others have as well. Thiago Silva wasn't playing. Should he have started? I don't know. I think he was in the stands in an ice bath somewhere still. So I don't know if you can afford to do that game in and game out with him. But again, who are the veterans? As I've said, I think this team, even when I look at everybody available, how many game changers are there? I think maybe they're recognize that, because I mean, other than Reece James, I can't think of too many players, certainly no goal scorers, which has been an issue, and maybe that's one that I could kind of get behind criticizing Todd Bowley and everybody else, is that they're signing midfielders, they're signing defenders. We see what's happening with Oba, continues to be a cancer in the club, and he probably no longer will be there. Just the fact that he was substituted as a substitute and not even on the bench today tells you everything, probably the right thing to do. But I just don't see a team who, even when they have everybody available, is anywhere near the Chelsea Football Club that we kind of remember from that era that we need to forget about.
Thank you very much for watching ESPN FC on YouTube. For more highlights, analysis, and exclusive content, be sure to subscribe.